Good evening. The Jackson Public School Board meeting is now called to order. Board members, we have 6 members present, 5 here in the boardroom. Dr. Jean Hairston is on the line. Therefore, we have a quorum. We have all had an opportunity to review the agenda. Is there a motion to approve the agenda as presented?
I so move. Second.
Mr. Figgis has moved. Mr. McGuffey has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. We've all had an opportunity to review the minutes. Is there a motion to approve the January 18, 2024 regular board meeting minutes?
Motion.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved. Mrs. Thompson has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Dr. Green.
Thank you, Dr. Sivak. Good evening, board members, to our JPS team members and scholars and parents and community partners who are joining us this evening. We'll begin as we typically do with our video highlights.
A surprise award presentation at Clausell Elementary School, where second grade teacher Rosalind Cotton was honored with the Alice Clark Award for her dedication and service teaching JPS scholars.
You are the January Alice Clark Teacher of Excellence.
Appreciate the commitment that you have for our scholars. Ms. Cotton, you are one of the very few who in 5 years that you've worked with us, you have had perfect attendance.
I'm just really happy to do my job because I've done it so long. And this is almost my 20th year.
Oh,
so
wow.
That's why I stay with it, because I enjoy it.
Thank you, Ms. Cotton.
A-rated school!
And a second celebration at Clausell was held to celebrate the school's A rating with a back-to-school halftime show.
Whatever they want to do, to remember that starts here at Clausell Elementary. That starts here with the choices that they're making every single day.
This event is a partnership with True Care. They're here to do a halftime show for our scholars, to provide them with backpacks and supplies.
We want to make sure our communities create an environment where our kids especially can learn and play and have fun.
That I've come so far. This is amazing.
JPS celebrates 5 outstanding Wells APAC Elementary School scholars who excelled in every subject, earning prestigious recognition as inductees into the National Elementary Honor Society.
I'm excited to be a part of something big, something that makes a change.
Those students who have been selected by the faculty and our school for successfully completing the first semester with an 85 or above average in each subject.
The Mississippi Miracle is real, and y'all are a big reason why.
Congratulations to Elizabeth Cantor, Bo Frost, Madeline Hall, Rhea Hunter, and Jane Walker. Your achievements stand as a testament to your determination in your studies. Lanier High School, under the leadership of Mississippi Sports Hall of Famer Orsmond Jordan, clinched a flawless 43-0 undefeated basketball season in 1964 and 65, averaging 102 points per game. The Bulldogs' dominance secured a national championship, winning a postseason tournament in Montgomery, Alabama. For more information about Jackson Public Schools and Black History Month, visit our website at jackson.k12.ms.us. Follow us on Facebook at Jackson Public Schools, on Instagram at JPS Student Voices, on Twitter at JPS District, Comcast Channels 18 and 19, and YouTube at youtube.com/JPSITV.
Thank you, team, for those highlights. Really appreciate that the breadth of experiences that you captured and celebrations that you captured, information from across our district. Also, do want to shout out our team and the work, the communications team, public relations team, for the work that they've done on the website and helping us to celebrate Black History Month and just providing some really thought-provoking and exciting pieces of information and celebrations there. So thank you for all of that. Board members, I'm pleased to report this evening that we held our first Facilities Repurposing Advisory Committee meeting on January the 30th. During the meeting, we outlined the purpose of the committee and the committee's responsibilities. We had Duval Decker to walk us through, Roy Decker from Duval Decker, to walk us through the the comprehensive study that they've conducted and to help to lay some of the groundwork for the efforts of that committee going forward. And you see some pictures from the convening there. Although we prepared to have the committees to consider 4 repurposing proposals, one in partnership with the City Planning Office to develop some housing, and 3 others to demolish some school buildings and create some green space. At the advice of the committee, we decided to talk a bit more about how we might gather, pull in more proposals, more ideas for how to use this space. And so I'll talk about some next steps in a minute. And so they really wanted us to make a stronger effort to solicit some ideas and entreaties from various potential partners. And so here are a few of the outcomes of the meeting, and I definitely thought it was a really strong and productive meeting. First, we committed to issue a request for proposals, an RFP, to formally invite potential purchasers or lessees or developers to express their interest in one or another of our facilities. And so with that, we'd likely leave it open with no closing date so that we can just on a rolling basis continue to gather any interest, any formal interest that there might be. Board members, I know you're aware, and some others might be aware, we fairly regularly hear from various members of the public around some of the some interest or with questions about one facility or another. And so this would be a formal way for people to engage with us and share their thoughts about how they might utilize and for us to consider that. So that's one, to develop and issue an RFP for repurposing a facility. The second was there was quite a bit of discussion and urging from the committee around our communications and marketing of the properties. What are the properties? What are the available properties, or the ones that are impending following closure or consolidations? Where are they? What do we know about those properties? So a lot of the information that we have, but helping to better share that and more effectively share that information with the broader community and specifically with some realtors and developers. And so that's a charge that came out of the meeting to rethink our use of the web page with that information, kind of connected also to the RFP issuance, and even thinking about broader engagement with community, but all of the communications and marketing efforts. And then lastly, the committee has agreed to a standing monthly meeting where we would continue to develop some common understanding around various opportunities, looking at models in other states and other districts for how they've repurposed schools, some of the financial opportunities, funding opportunities for some of these potential projects, and also obviously to consider any proposals that we get prior to that meeting. And so as we open the RFP, as we get some ideas and proposals submitted, to bring those on to the committee following, or at the next following meeting. So all in all, I believe it was a really powerful meeting. We had a lot of engagement, a lot of questions, questions about some of the information that was shared in the study that was conducted, lots of expertise around just considering proposals and how we might help individuals or organizations that are interested in some of our properties to engage with us and talk with us about that. So more to come, but I did want to give you that update after the first meeting, and just share that I think from all accounts it was a really productive meeting. And now, board members, I'm pleased to share that I was invited along with some others to participate in a courageous leaders panel at the Power Up conference that was held on February 1st in Charleston, South Carolina. Power Up is a series of national engagements led by the White House Initiative on Advancing Educational Equity, Excellence, and Economic Opportunity for Black Americans. And so this series of national engagements and conversations is intended to consider both the challenges, to consider the challenges, but as well the promising practices and some resourcing or potential resourcing in advancing education equity and economic opportunity in Black communities. As you can see, I had an opportunity to, or maybe you haven't seen that, I don't know if they have it, had an opportunity to greet the Secretary of Education, Dr. Miguel Cardona, and to network with some other education leaders from, mainly from the southern region, but across the nation. And it was clear from even the invitation, let alone the overall convening, that Jackson Public Schools is definitely on the national radar. And so I was pleased to have and honored to have the opportunity to represent us in that convening. And speaking of the national radar and the national scene, board members, I continue to be very proud of the progress that we're making in Jackson Public Schools. As you know and as you've seen, we've made some really significant academic strides and others, but academic strides in particular over the last several years, despite the many challenges we've faced. And our hard work has not gone unnoticed, even on, again, the national scene. Last week, researchers from Harvard and Stanford universities released national data and analysis regarding school districts' recovery from the pandemic. And you'll recall that for the last few years, we've talked a lot about our focus, our academic focus around acceleration, and not simply teaching and moving scholars forward within the school year, but achieving more than a year's worth of growth, which would help us to recover from some of the losses that we'd experienced previously. And so that data was released last week, and overall, as we look at the performance of other large urban districts or larger urban districts across the country, many of whom are members of the Council of the Great City Schools organization. Amongst those member districts, we are consistently among the fastest recovering districts in our states for the most part, and even some of the best recovery and fastest improvement across the nation. JPS scholars in particular achieved the highest rate of improvement in mathematics than any of the other member districts. From the spring 2022 to spring 2023 state testing. And we had the second highest reading improvement among those member districts. Again, we're talking about similarly situated, actually many of them a bit larger than us, but similarly situated urban districts. We're not talking about our typically better resourced urban, suburban school districts. And so while we know that the pandemic impacted us all, and there were challenges all over the place, there's lots of data around the increasing achievement gap between our poorer and richer scholars, our black and white or other kind of ethnic or subgroups of scholars. But we're really proud that our district, based on the data that was gathered and analyzed by these two universities and their researchers, that we were called out, and that our data was specifically outpacing others. And so really, really proud to share that. And if anyone wants to find that what we have posted here is, I think that's Upshot. I know there's a New York Times article, there's a Washington Post article, but if you want to go to or just look up the study itself, it's the January 2024 Education Recovery Scorecard. Again, it's the January 2024 Education Recovery Scorecard, and this is research done by individuals from Harvard and from Stanford universities. So kudos to all the team helping to make those some realities here in our district. At this time, board members, I know that that you're very well aware that we're about to sunset our strategic plan. We felt really good about the strategic plan and the work we did to develop that, and worked really hard to continue to focus and allow the strategic plan to guide our decision making and priorities in that. But it's that time, and as we're in the 5th year of our 5-year plan, Dr. Merritt, our Chief of Staff, who will lead that effort of planning for us, will join us now and share some of the timeline and next steps around the strategic planning effort.
Great evening to the Board of Trustees and Dr. Green and to the audience. I am just elated to share the upcoming timeline for our strategic plan. We like to celebrate good work in this district, so I do want to first shout out Dr. Cormack, who led this initiative in developing this current strategic plan. And I'm going to give Dr. Green a shout out, as he has held us accountable for the implementation and the execution of this strategic plan. Everything that we do, the strategic plan is embedded in it. You always hear our vision, our mission, our core values, our commitment echoed in all that we do. So just briefly, I want to share with you some timelines that we have for this upcoming strategic plan. First of all, we will kick off Thursday, and this information will be published publicly the latter part of this week as we confirm the April 11th date. But on Thursday, February the 21st, we will have our first stakeholder engagement session at Kirksey Middle School at 5:30 p.m. Of course, at this time, we will put everything before all stakeholders, the vision, mission, core values, and commitments, and solicit input. We will review the milestones that are included in this strategic plan and let everyone know where we are with accomplishing those. And again, we will solicit input from all those that attend. And so we will share this information broadly and hope for a good attendance at this event. After that's done, and we are working, I need to note that we are working with Insight Education Group. They supported us in the first strategic plan, and they will continue to support us with this strategic plan. And so on Thursday, April the 11th, and you notice the tentative is in red, we hope to convene, and they will bring back all of the information that they gathered at the February 21st meeting and share the feedback that was collected. And again, that will take place at Kirksey at 5:30. And then we will begin to finalize the plan. In May, they will have a final plan presented to us, and we will prepare to launch the plan definitely and begin to implement it January 1, 2024. So this is a brief timeline of what will happen. If you will advance to the next slide. So also internally, there will be some engagement sessions that will include our senior leadership team, our extended leadership team, as they will work with those groups to get their input as well. We will definitely lean into the existing advisory groups that are convened by Dr. Green, the student, parent and family advisory group, as well as the teacher advisory group. Also, Monday is our launch date for our comprehensive needs assessment. So what we hope to do as we develop this strategic plan is not only have feedback that we collected at the stakeholder engagement sessions, but hopefully we will have some of the data from our comprehensive needs assessment, and we can look at both the information that individuals have provided and have a strong strategic plan. Again, this is our timeline. We are excited about it and look forward to your participation as well as the Greater Jackson community participation in this.
Thank you, Dr. Merritt. And board members, you'll recall, or some of you will recall, because you were more deeply involved in the process. We did a lot of groundwork to try and arrive at a clear sense of, what do we believe in, what do we want to be true for our scholars. There's lots of ideas around programming that can be considered, and so want to definitely, source and pull up those ideas from the broader public. But we want to also align that with what do we hear from our scholars? What are we hearing from parents? What are the things that are keeping you here? What are the things that you see in other places that you might want to see here? And of course with our team members as well. I want to just name that we feel really good about and have gotten a lot of good feedback on the current strategic plan. So our thought is now, our assumption, and just want to name the assumption, is that we wouldn't be starting from the ground floor. However, depending on what we hear from community, there could be some major shifts from where we are in our current plan. I would imagine there's some things that we'll want to certainly emphasize in the next plan that are not so emphasized in the current one. But we'll be listening carefully and want to make sure that it too, this next 5 years, that we've got a plan that really articulates the needs and the desires and the energy direction for our district. Let me pause and see if there are any questions or any feedback on any of that.
I just have one question about my recollection. I was not part of the board at that point. My recollection is that we had not just the sort of internal groups and the sort of our JPS community, but there was also involvement from outside organizations,
Partners.
Kellogg and all these other partners. Is that going to continue as well? Is the plan to hear feedback from them or anything like that?
Well, there isn't currently a plan to have a separate engagement with them, but to invite all of those would-be partners and stakeholders to the same engagement.
Okay.
Want to try and diminish the role of the district to play telephone from this group to this group. It's kind of helpful for our parents to hear and our teachers to hear what our scholars are saying, and for our community partners to hear what maybe parents or teachers are saying and that sort of thing. So to the extent that we can have fuller engagement in one conversation, it's oftentimes helpful. I do recall previously we had some really strongly facilitated tables and smaller groups within the larger convening, and so we'll likely have a bit of that as well, so that there's some roll-alikes, scholars together, parents together, teachers together, but then some sharing with the whole group. Other questions or feedback with regard to that?
One piece of feedback and then a question. On feedback, I'm wondering what are your thoughts around, so I saw Kirksey on there twice. What are your thoughts about also holding session in South Jackson at Peoples or Cardozo concurrently or on other nights? Probably on other nights, because if someone can't make it.
Yeah. That makes sense.
And then question. I think we did some board working sessions, maybe. Is that right? Is that contemplated in this again?
There's some opportunity before we get to the larger community work, and an opportunity after the final community work. So We'll want to gather some ideas and get any feedback before, but also have some opportunity to really stamp. I know we spent a lot of time on vision and mission statements. Those some of the core components of the plan that board members would necessarily need to stamp, right? Not all the programs in this, but what are your goals? What are your visions, or your vision mission statements? Those sorts of things in particular.
Okay, sounds good. Thank you.
Yeah, and we'll be sure to articulate that more clearly in the timeline there, so that everyone knows, when board will have opportunities to lean in a bit more directly. Other questions or feedback on the strategic planning effort? Awesome. Well, finally, board members, once again, our talented scholars from the JPS Career Development Center have won the Congressional App Challenge for the 2nd Congressional District of Mississippi. I chuckle about it now because it's like, who is our competition? Who is our competition? What is going on here? Anyway, we're very proud of them, and here to introduce these fantastic scholars is our CDC simulation and design teacher, Maisha Wallace. I'm struggling to remain humble with regard to this. How about you? I don't know. It's kind of hard.
It's easy. This one is just easy. No competition. But in all seriousness, good evening, everyone.
Good evening.
And I can really say it's always a blessing. I say that every year to walk in your calling, because for the 7th year in a row, consecutively, I have the pleasure to introduce to you the Congressional App Challenge winners for the Mississippi's 2nd Congressional District. Nashawn McGrew, Jada Brown, Kyla Collins, and Caleb Johnson. You guys come right here for us. Thank you. They're shy. And their app, Task Hive. I'm so proud of them, y'all. These are my babies. We fuss, we fight, but they did it. And I'm gonna let them talk to about their app with you guys.
Oh, yay. Nice.
All right, people, hope you don't mind. I prepared a little speech. All right. I'm going to say some from the heart, but I'm going to say some that I wrote down as well, though. But first of all, I'd like to thank to everyone who came here today for your attendance, because it means a lot and it shows that you care about JPS students and JPS kids. I'm sorry, excuse my nerves.
Benita.
But I also want to thank Maisha Wallace for not giving up on us and for keep persevering, because honestly, with our ADHD prone tails, we could not have made it without you. So thank you. Task Hive was designed as an app to help people who have ADHD or problems with procrastination or can't keep hold of things. So we was like, we have ADHD as well, so why not come up with an idea to help others out? So we designed an app called Task Hive, and it's intended to help you arrange certain tasks to do properly at a certain time, or date, or place. Now, we also didn't want to just tell you guys to, of course, just do this, and then we're going to expect you to do it. No. So what we decided to do was come up with a few ideas to award you guys and keep you, up on your feet and constantly doing things. So we decided to reach out to several vendors like Chick-fil-A, Crumble Cookie, pizza, food vendors, and also other vendors as well that could provide for you all. And we would like to reward you with those services. I believe that is all I have to say. So thank you for your time.
Dr. Cook, could you come up and help me present the awards to the students, please?
Good evening, Dr. Seebeck, board members, Dr. Green. One of the things that Ms. Wallace failed to mention, I was hoping that she would mention, is that Congressman Thompson and his office have committed for this year's app winners to have their app patent this year. So we're really excited about that. So at this time, we do want to present this certificate of achievement from Jackson Public Schools to Caleb Johnson, Kyla Collins, Jada Brown, and our spokesperson himself, Michelle McGrew. Thank you all.
Congratulations.
This is pretty amazing that our team and our scholars just continue to show out and to achieve at this level. I'm excited actually to check out the functionality. Was it Task High? Task? Yes. I'm looking forward to checking it out because I don't know, I haven't been identified, but there are times when I struggle with attending to my tasks. So we'll see. We'll see. Thank you all again, and congratulations again. We're very proud of you. With that, President Seebeck, I turn the meeting back over to you.
All right. Thank you, Dr. Green. Again, so proud of our scholars once again, just showing up and showing out, showing the world. So I'm actually, I know I'm in a board meeting, but I'm searching for Task Hive on my app store. So okay, we'll keep. Let us know when it gets up there. All right. Board members, we do have one public comment this evening, and so we'll get ready to invite our community member up. Before we begin, I would just like to remind community members that anyone who would like to make public comment should email their request to Ms. Rosalind Williams at roswilliams@jackson.k12.ms.us no later than 4 p.m. on the day of the meeting, or appear in person in the boardroom no later than 5:15 p.m. on the day of the meeting. Before we get started, I just want to set some expectations. Our speaker will have 3 minutes to make comments. We will keep the minutes. Attorney Turner will keep the minutes. The board believes the public comments are very important. We will listen and consider the comments, but we will not respond at this time. If there is an issue that has not been taken up with the leadership at a particular school or to school district administration, we certainly encourage such action. Board members, we can all be reached via our email addresses, which are on the JPS website. So at this time, I'll invite Attorney Turner to invite up our public comment speaker.
Board members, Ebony Rice from JFT has signed up to address you regarding per diem and contract days.
Good evening, everyone. Dr. Seebeck, Dr. Green, members of the board, and others. Just have 2 quick questions that were submitted to us from one of our members. Question 1 says, last year, contracts said 187 days, and the calendar said 192 days. JPS gave a contract addendum to be signed by employees after JFT informed JPS of this issue. So employees who sign that contract addendum are supposed to be paid 5 extra per diem days. So far this year, we have only been paid for 2 of those 5 days. So the question is, will the other 3 days be paid before the end of this year's contract?
Well, we actually do not respond in the meeting, but
okay.
a member of the administration will follow up.
Yes, sir. Thank
Yep.
you. You did say that.
That's okay.
And question number 2, it says, since the 2024-2025 calendar has been approved for 192 days for teachers, will contracts reflect that? And how will that change affect the certified teachers per diem? Will that per diem decrease, or will it stay the same? Thank you.
Thank you, Ms. Rice. We appreciate the time and the comments. Next, we will move on to our information-only items, and we have our school board presentation, one of our favorite moments of every meeting. Mrs. Marshall Thomas, our Assistant Superintendent of the High School Division, will introduce our speaker this evening.
All right, great evening, President
Good evening.
Seebeck, board members, Dr. Green, JPS family, and friends. Tonight we will have a presentation from Ms. Aaliyah Price, who is a charger at Callaway High School. She's a senior there. Aaliyah's goals after high school is to join the National Guard, and her future goals is to become a registered nurse. Aaliyah stated that it was very important that she serve as a student board representative because she wanted to be a voice for her classmates at Callaway High School. At this time, ladies and gentlemen, let's welcome Aaliyah Price.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Good evening.
My presentation tonight will be on implementing the option of late arrival in addition to early release. The attendance policy now states that a student that is absent for more than 37% of the instructional days is considered absent the entire day. You have to be present for 63% of the day. The early release policy is that a student must meet career and college readiness benchmarks of 17 in English and a 19 on the math, ACT, or earn a silver level on the ACT work keys. The pros of implementing a late arrival in addition to early release are it gives students additional time to get to school. It helps with the tardiness. It helps with the class sizes, so the classes won't be as large in the mornings. And it helps with assist with rising the ADA the average daily attendance. And it's also an added incentive for responsible students. The cons of implementing the late arrival in addition to the early release are that students still may be late, and students that may qualify for the late arrival may not have transportation to school because most people ride the buses in the morning. It relates to the policy because the students will be at the school 63% of the instructional day. It would just be at the end of the day instead of the morning. This is in the circle, the yellow circle. It is the requirements that shows that a neighboring school district that shows that they have a choice of early arrival or late arrival or early dismissal. And this is a schedule from a neighboring school district that shows them not having a class the first and second block. And my recommended revision is to consider revising the current policy to include the option of late arrival for students. Are there any questions?
Thank you, Ms. Price. Board members, questions, comments?
My only comment is that my high school had that, so it seems like a good idea to me.
Thank you.
I don't know if we're done yet.
Oh, just one.
He always throws softballs to the students.
So I noticed that you mentioned the cons. What would be some of your suggestions or ideas around those cons?
Like, as for the transportation, I think it would kind of be hard to like try to have buses to go pick up the students with late arrival, because it's already kind of hard having buses pick up the students for now. So,
But have you given it any other thought of how they would get to school?
no, ma'am.
I had a question. I actually think it's really, I want to lift up your research of finding another.
The 1st Battalion. From 1977 to...
Do you know, do we have the ability to track this within JPS? So what I saw was early, you got to have a 2.5, pass all the assessments on track. Do we have the systems to just, can we run a list? Is this easy, or is it going to take a little bit of work to figure out who would meet these criteria?
Well, we kind of already does it, like with the early release. Like the counselors let you know if you are on your graduation path, and if you're not, then you can't get early release. Or if you don't have the certain GPA or the ACT score, then you can't get early release. So I don't think it would be that hard.
Okay. Great. Well, thank you very much. We appreciate your time. And
No, not yet.
Oh.
So I appreciate the pros and cons here. I want to, like, in your heart of hearts, what's the real benefit here? What would you, if we were to take this on, what would you expect us to accomplish if we did it?
I think it will help students get to school, be at school more, because most of the kids, for example, my school, if we don't come around a certain time, then there is really no point. We're still going to be absent regardless. So with the late arrival, even if you oversleep and wake up late, you still be able to come to school.
Gotcha. In your mind, it would be either or, not both, right? I wouldn't have late arrival and...
Oh, no, it's either or. You could choose.
No, because the requirement is 3%, so not like a few minutes at the beginning, few minutes at the end. It's either or.
Yeah, so like now, early release, you get the 4th block off. It'll be, you can come 2nd block instead of 1st block, and then stay the rest of the 63%.
Gotcha. Would you have used something like this?
Yes.
What would you have done with the time?
Sleep in, I don't know. Mornings be hard.
Okay. Okay. Gotcha. I appreciate the honest response. This is compelling to me. I don't know that I'm ready to do it, but I want to hear some more and think some more about it. Because if there's a way, what's ringing for me is if something like this could cause more scholars to come to school, one, and if you're chronically late, address the tardiness. Now, I would hope they wouldn't be late for their late arrival, but if that were to help us, then, it's worth at least considering.
I got one last question. I got to follow on to that. Right now, for early release, there's almost no way to mess it up, right? I mean, you show up, you leave early. But, I mean, you can, if your grades will stay up, all that stuff. But, I mean, for this, if they're still late and tardy, do you think it's fair for us to say you no longer qualify?
Yes, so like with early release, you still have, I think it's, you have to be present where you get missed 5 days before they take your early release. So I think it should be the same way. Like if you don't come to school, then you don't get late arrival.
What if it was harsher and it was just that you were tardy 5 times?
I can't hear you. I'm
What
sorry.
if it was a little bit harsher and it was just that you were tardy for second block 5 times?
I mean, if you don't like meet the requirements to have it too.
Yeah, so with the other schools that do this, do you know like a percentage of ones that choose either or of students?
I don't.
Yeah, I was just wondering how many students would choose that versus going home early.
I've never considered this.
Starkville High School only had it in the morning, so you couldn't leave early. We only had late arrival. Right when I was in school, that was it. It was called senior privilege, but that was it.
Thank you.
Thank you. Yeah.
As you were thinking of this, were there any negative impacts that stood in the way of your making this decision or making these recommendations?
No, ma'am. I don't think it's like anything negative.
Okay. So you're really gung-ho on this.
When Dr. Killens was at Wingfield, he had implemented what he called the night school, and the students were very late arriving because they didn't come until like 2 o'clock in the day, and then they stayed until like 6, 7 at night, I guess. I don't know exactly what time, but it was mostly for those who got in trouble, and so that he wouldn't have to necessarily send them over to the alternative school. That was their alternative school to come when the other students were pretty much being released. And it worked out well for those students that were in there because they had uniforms, they had to do all these other things they had to do, and it was really, but it also worked for some who were like working to take care of their families or take care of loved ones or their own babies, children at home and things like that. And so I've often thought about we should have alternatives for our young people so that if they are wanting and willing to push through to get their education, we can work and be flexible with them. But not necessarily, if they're going to still be showing up late and all that kind of stuff. That doesn't make any sense. We have young people that will do that. But to do whatever we can to make it easier or more accessible to get that education that they're trying to get. Work with them. So I like it.
You did take into consideration the requirements of the education department in terms of attendance and all of that. You took all of that into consideration?
Yes, ma'am.
Okay. So we don't want anybody to get up there and, miss graduation simply because you have not put in the length of time as required by the Mississippi Department of Education. So.
Yeah, they will still be getting the same amount of time as the early release, but they're, instead of having early release, they have late arrival. So instead of missing their 4th block, they miss the 1st block. But they'll still be at school the same amount of time.
All right, Ms. Price, well, you've certainly given us something to think about, which is the goal of this part of the meeting. So thank you very much, and congratulations on an engaging presentation.
Thank you.
All right, board members, and now the moment we've all been waiting for, our benchmark 2 data updates. Mrs. Blackshear, Latoya Blackshear, our Director of Planning and Evaluation, will lead us through this presentation.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Board President Dr. Sivak, board members, Superintendent Dr. Green, and JPS community. For information only, I'm sharing with you the results of our Benchmark 2 assessment. As with all our presentations, we would like to remind you of our vision and our mission, and that's what you see stated, projected here. Our vision is to prepare scholars to achieve globally, to contribute locally, and to be fulfilled individually. Our mission is to develop scholars through world-class learning experiences, to obtain an exceptional knowledge base, critical and relevant skill set, and the necessary disposition for great success. We have 6 core values, and everything we do in the Office of Data and Accountability touches one or more of the 6 core values. For this presentation, we're going to focus on equity, excellent growth mindsets, and also relevance. Our session goals for this evening is to provide you with a high-level overview of our Benchmark 2 results, examine proficiency for the current year against our prior year's Benchmark 2, highlight schools showcasing the most significant gains, as well as outline some next steps based on our performance data. Before I begin, I want to remind everyone that our ELA benchmark assessments are comprehensive in nature. Benchmark 1, 2, and 3 are comprehensive for ELA. Our math, science, and U.S. history, they're paced for benchmark 1 and 2. However, for benchmark 3, it will be comprehensive. So our overall proficiency for ELA is 27%. We saw a slight decrease from benchmark 1 to 2 of about 0.3. However, when you compare our benchmark 2 last year to this year, we increased by 2%. And again, our MAP proficiency data is there just to remind us of what our spring MAP assessment was for proficiency. So our ELA benchmark for grades 3, 4, and 5. Our grades 3 and 5 saw a decline in proficiency from benchmark 1 to 2. However, our 4th grade increased in proficiency by 6% from benchmark 1 to 2. And then overall, we want to note that when comparing current year's benchmark 2 proficiency to last year for grades 4 and 5, they both increased. So you see that. However, when we're looking at our 3rd grade benchmark, we do want to say that they experienced a decline, but can be attributed to new teachers in that grade level, increased technology enhanced questions, teachers teaching part of the standard, as well as the teachers and the assistant superintendent did point out that our current 3rd graders were also our COVID babies during that time, pre-K and kindergarten. And then also, when you look at our 5th grade, we noted the decline there from benchmark 1 as well, and can attribute that to an increase in instructional or informational technology, and not really exposing our scholars to a high level of informational text. So let's take a look at our middle schools. So when you look at our middle schools, you see that grades 6, 8, and 10 saw an increase from benchmark 1 to benchmark 2. You see also English 2 having the highest proficiency, and they also had the highest growth and growth for all on that assessment as well. You'll see all grades increase current proficiency as compared to our last year's benchmark 2. Now, we did have a decline with about approximately 7% for 7th grade from benchmark 1 to 2, and that decline can be attributed to also an increase in our informational text that is centered around science. So our goal, I think that Dr. Green highlighted before, with each of our benchmark assessment is to help all of our scholars achieve proficiency. We are achieving proficiency. We want to see levels 1, 2 decrease and push all of our scholars towards proficiency. So when you see level 1, we had approximately 52% of our students scoring in level 1 on benchmark 1. We moved them to levels 2 and 3. We did see a slight decline in our level 5, scholars, where approximately 5% of those moved to levels 2 and 3. So you see, therefore, a majority of our students are kind of residing in levels 2 and 3. So let's take a look at our math. Our overall proficiency for math is 23.9%. We increased from benchmark 1 to 2. We increased from benchmark 2 last year to benchmark 2 this year. Slightly behind our MAP spring, but just know that I indicated earlier that our MAP proficiency is comprehensive, and at this time, we're only assessing what was taught. Okay. So for our grades 3, 4, and 5, you actually see, let's see, I got ahead of myself. So for grades 3, 4, and 5, you also see an increase and or maintain proficiency from benchmark 1 to 2 for 3rd grade. For 5th grade, we saw a slight decline. However, all grades increased from benchmark last year to this year, with the greatest gain being seen in 3rd grade. Secondary level, grades 6th, 7th, and 8th. Our grades 6 and 7 increased in proficiency from benchmark 1 to 2, with 6th grade having the highest proficiency. The greatest decrease, as you see, was seen in 8th grade, and when our assistant superintendent and teachers spoke about that, they contributed that decrease to being the pacing. Teachers were behind in pacing. There were a number of standards that were not taught, so they contribute that decrease for 8th grade. For Algebra 1, so both middle and high school saw an increase in proficiency from benchmark 1 to 2. We saw a decrease in our high school Algebra 1 from last year to this year, and again, the assistant superintendents and teachers, they've noted that they were also behind in pacing. They had 2 new concepts that needed to be taught, which represented 23% of that assessment. So again, you'll see our goal is to push all of our scholars towards proficiency. So we had 58% of our scholars in level 1 for the benchmark 1. 58% of those students moved to levels 2 and 3. We did see a decrease in our level 5, and that decrease represent about approximately 10% of those students moved to levels 2 and 3. So our overall proficiency for science, 33.2%, a decline from benchmark 1 to 2, and this time last year. So let's dig a little bit deeper in the grade levels there. Now, when you look at your science by grade levels, grade 5, 5th, 8th, and biology 1, 8th grade saw an increase from benchmark 1 to 2 of approximately 3%. 5th grade in biology decreased from proficiency from benchmark 1 to 2, with 5th grade having the highest decrease. And when speaking with the assistant superintendents as well and the teachers, we've all noted that benchmark 1 was a little bit more easier, I should say. So our benchmark 2 was more rigorous. The students And teachers had to really think critically and have good observation skills. And we're also, even with the Algebra 1 assessment and the science assessment, we're working with our new assessment partners to ensure proper alignment. So our science proficiency or performance levels, 74% of our scholars that were in level 1, we moved them. So you see a decrease from 1 to 2. We moved them to levels 2 and 3. We had 11% of our level 5 scholars, they moved to 2 and 3. And then, of course, they didn't move to 4, they actually moved to 2 and 3, and then our scholars in level 4 dropped to level 1 and 2, and that was approximately about 45%. So, lastly, our history. So we had 37% to be proficient on benchmark 2, a great increase from benchmark 1 to 2 of 24%, and also a little ahead of benchmark 2 last year to this year. This is what we like to see right here. We want all of our performance levels to look like this, where all of our scholars are moving towards proficiency. You see level 1, 82% of our scholars moved to 2 and 3, and we continually push the scholars from 2 to 3 to 4 to 5. So that's what we want all of our proficiency levels to move as we assess each benchmark. So here you see we're spotlighting some of our schools that performed well or had the greatest rate of change from benchmark 2 this year to last year. I do want to go ahead and make sure I call your attention to some of the schools that were closed due to renovations or consolidated together. You'll see Isabel is listed there. You'll see Lake, the receiving, Pecan Park is listed there. You see Johnson, which is a receiving schools. Even though they have consolidated, all of those schools remained steady and or increased in all areas from last year. Marshall saw a slight decrease of about 1% in mathematics, and reading was about 8%, but overall they improved in science. And then we know Lester transitioned as well, but keep in mind that all new teachers are there in grades 3 to 5. And additionally, we put some new testing protocols in place district-wide with MDE support and guidelines. And then that just kind of shows, again, some of those highlighted schools in science. That's our U.S. history. And then lastly, our overall next steps. I won't read every one, but what the next steps that we are going to focus on is offering targeted professional development sessions for teachers that are facing challenges. And those are teachers that are scoring or having no proficiency. So we're continuing to work with them to enhance their instructional strategies and helping them to thoroughly understand the standards. Also, we're conducting professional development sessions aimed at aligning assessment, teaching, and curriculum centered around the questions below, because we believe helping our teachers to have a clear understanding of the standards helps them to truly know what students should know and be able to do, and help them to assess whether the students have really mastered the standard. And then that would also help us with differentiating instruction with maintaining our level 4s and 5 students. And this slide just shows we want to continue to strengthen our K to 2nd grade to ensure they are ready for 3rd grade. Any questions?
Thank you, Mrs. Blackshear. Board members, questions, comments?
I think it would be helpful for it to just hear from you about one sort of overarching, I won't call it an issue, but maybe something that's relevant to our data. Can you talk about some of the challenges that we've faced in changing the testing vendor, essentially?
So I would say one of our overarching is just to ensure the alignment is there. Because in the past, our benchmark 2, they have been good predictors of it. So just ensuring that the assessment is aligned to our current state standards and making sure that teachers are aware of the many ways that an item can be assessed. Because what we teach our teachers is that it doesn't matter if you've taught the standard, doesn't matter how it is assessed, we should be able to master it. So I think that is where we're working to.
And just so I'm clear, that's true. I think this is right, but so I'd love to hear. That's true. We have a new tester, essentially,
New
across
platform.
all grades. And so have we seen that issue crop up more in certain subject areas or in certain grade levels or anything like that?
So I would say comparing our benchmark 1 to benchmark 2, we've seen the alignment challenges in Algebra 1, and then we've also seen it in science as well. And that's where the sister superintendents and the Dr. Smith and OTL is constantly working with them to ensure proper alignment as we prepare for our benchmark 3 assessment.
What are the steps that are being taken to sort of make sure? I know I saw in some of the material that were provided to us that you get previews. It sounds like that we're not getting a second iteration of that. Are we going to be able to do that on benchmark 3? Have we ironed those kinks out?
So yes, and I'm going to go ahead and yield to
Tag in. Good evening to members of the board, Dr. Green. So in answer to the question, yes. We have had conversations with the assessment vendor. We've been very forthcoming about some of the concerns around alignment. Our team receives those assessments well before, and we have members of our Office of Teaching and Learning review those and offer feedback to ensure alignment with district pacing. And so they have provided those rounds of feedback. In some instances, we saw that play out in ways that were positive and where we felt really good about the final product with assessment. In some instances, not so much. And so we've shared that feedback with the vendor to hold them accountable respectfully as we work through our own internal process to make certain that there is alignment. But suffice it to say, those conversations are ongoing. They have received that feedback from us in earnest because we really count on these assessments to give us valuable information about the instructional process and how that is playing out.
Great, that's all.
Doc, you may want to just remind or clarify for folks why we made the change in vendors.
Yeah, so I mean, part of it with procurement, from time to time, we look at various ways to assess the contract and how that's working and playing out. Within the assessment space over a number of years, even just over the last 5 years, even with the same vendor, as they are bought out by other companies or platform changes, we've been in the mix, and we're not unique as a school district, who's subject to some of those other issues. I will say that one of the reasons that really compelled us that it was time for a switch were some of we really were having conversations about how do we use these data, how do we pull down reports. One of the benefits of our new assessment vendor is the accessibility of the student data reports, the level of item analysis, the kinds of information about unpacking the questions that can really help teachers as they complete an assessment really think through how could I have taught this better? A, B, C, D. Many of my students were distracted by this item. And so those reports really allow teachers to dive in and have conversation about instruction and how to go back and have another bite at the apple for reteaching.
Yeah. Yeah, just, one, want to clarify for folks that we were looking just to make a change. There were some things that we needed and wanted in terms of resources for teachers, and I believe Mrs. Blackshear spoke to this. Often enough, we think we are teaching to the entirety of a standard, but then you get a question or a task or something that challenges, like, oh, it wasn't just identify, you had to also analyze. Did I teach that? Was that a part of my instruction? And often enough, when you go back, you find that, you know, your lessons, your checks for understanding, your homework, your quizzes, all the things that you're doing in the classroom don't speak to the entirety of a skill. And so we need tools that help us along the way to see more of how that skill can be not just assessed, but how it can be demonstrated in the classroom and on assessments as well.
If I may just make 2 quick points. One of the things that we really appreciate this board for doing is supporting us with the district calendar with additional professional development time. Next Friday, February the 16th, we'll have a full day of teacher professional development, rich opportunities to look at benchmark 2 and to even go deeper. I've charged our team as we plan out these sessions for teachers to ensure that data and a review of data is incorporated in what teachers receive. And we've also lifted some instructional protocols like examining student work samples as ways to really deepen learning and practice. Peer observation is occurring to really lift instructional practice, and collaborative lesson planning as one of the processes that we're lifting, that we've encouraged them to really spend time with some of the things that have been more troublesome. And so we believe that that's going to be helpful. But as a through line, I think to help the board kind of orient toward our big takeaway as an academic team, we are learning the lessons and imparting around assessment. And so we're looking to be better and stronger around tightening those things, both with vendor and with our internal team. But as a secondary through line, one of the things that I look toward as I look at the data is year-over-year comparisons. And so as you see our benchmark 2 results from 23 as compared to 24, what you'll see is that we're either slightly above or in a place that's likely comparable in most subject areas. And you saw how that played out as we ended the year. So we're looking to tighten the assessments. What we have is additional tools in terms of full days of teacher professional development. And we think that those things are going to help propel us to where we need to go next.
Let me just say I appreciate that presentation. It's very informative. One of the things I noticed that you said several times in your presentation was about being behind on pacing.
Yeah.
Could you share with us something specific in terms of what you're doing to address that issue?
Yeah. So it's a really good question. It's a very relevant question. Teachers are provided from our Office of Teaching and Learning team a pacing guide for those state tested areas. And so what we're doing is we're lifting the concern, and we're sharing it both with principals and with our central office supports as well. Our assistant superintendents have academic coaches. Within the Office of Teaching and Learning, we have curriculum leads. So we're all aligning on those things that we have learned from this benchmark assessment to ensure kind of greater fidelity around the pacing guides and calendars. Additionally, our teams have looked at high leverage standards, those things that occur a good bit in the assessment, and we're looking to learn further to help teachers make modifications to pacing, because there's both the pacing guide, but then there's also the live students in front of you who may have a challenge. And so your pacing guide may say you need to be in a particular place, but the reality of remediation and reteaching, strategic reteaching, needs to occur. And so where our team comes to play in the Office of Teaching and Learning, Dr. Smith, is helping teachers to help to repace their standards when they have run into challenges where students did not master it at the first bite, and yet we still have other things to present. And so how do I find and make time to both reach backward to the thing that has not yet been mastered and still stick with pacing? And it's been a challenge, but the supports of the team are vital in helping to align that and just to lift the concern for everyone.
Just a couple more thoughts on that. So, you know, to our educators' credit, you know, nobody wants to leave scholars behind, right? And so you get in there and you're teaching to a skill and find that there's some number of scholars who are not there, are not ready to move on. And so they really don't want to move on. and yet you got this pacing calendar that's telling you, hey, it's time to move on. And so one of the things, and Dr. Cormack was speaking to this at the end there, is supporting teachers with, if this half of the scholars are ready to move forward, and this half are not ready, how do you manage that in your classroom? How do you pull small groups or differentiate the instruction for those scholars so that these young people can move forward and fortify the skill, and you can reteach or whatever you have to do there? The other thing is we're working really, really hard to ensure that first teaching, first year, the first time around, that it's so impactful that you don't have half of your students not ready to move forward, but that it's more like 80% are ready to go or more. And that's where we've got to get to, where that first effort at teaching the skill is much more effective. It's much clearer. We've got a clear sense of the entirety of the skill if you're teaching the entirety, or at least the piece of it that you're teaching, so that what you've done, you don't have to circle back. It's like cleaning. If you clean it right the first time, you're less likely to have to come back and do it again because you missed a spot or that sort of thing. And so, and with more support and practice and all those things, and collaborative lesson planning and anticipating misconceptions from scholars, we can get at that more effectively the first time around. Yeah. And so, you know, those who need extra help, that's lessened, and you can manage it a bit better. But that's the whole challenge in teaching. That's at the crux of teaching. How do you do for a group of people what each individual needs, while also understanding that, you know, you've got to move through your curriculum.
Thank you all.
I got one more. So in the, this is a very specific question. Looking at the ELA third grade data, one of the reasons given for performance was just lingering effects of COVID. So I guess that was on page, I'll just look it up. Let's pull it up, because it's just a, so this is page, you'll probably get there before me. Okay, so it's on, that's it, right there. So there's an instance where the benchmark 2 was lower than the benchmark 2 the previous year, and it dropped this year. So COVID was a, now if you zoom ahead to elementary math, the same phenomenon did not happen. Is there something unique about reading that's different than math, where we could have like significantly outperforming benchmark 2 from the previous year and from benchmark 1?
Yes, in essence. So to describe a little bit about the reading habits and why being out of school or being even in a virtual environment was challenging. If we think about what occurs in the kindergarten and first grade curriculum around learning to read, it's pivotal. And so there's a lot around phonemic awareness, seeing the mouth produce words. It's where in-person instruction is clearly preferable. It's preferable for all subject areas, but acutely for reading in terms of reading development and language acquisition. And there's a lot that we've learned not only in our district but nationally about the challenges with the cohorts that learn to read primarily in virtual formats or remotely. And so we're redoubling our efforts with some supports. Of course, we have a robust attendance with an after school. We will take another second dive and reopen enrollments as we need to provide supports. We've had some supportive partners with lead partner support and really looking and providing tutorial, direct even tutorial support to scholars as a supplement to daily instruction. So we're trying to attack it from a variety of different lenses, but in essence, yes, the reading instruction really benefits from in-person, particularly as scholars learn to read, specifically based on phonemic awareness and phonics and manipulation of the language.
and took part in music programs. He later earned a bachelor and master's degree.
And then last year, we also focused a lot on our scholars, or have been and continue to do so, focus on them learning how to fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide. The third grade math assessment, if our students can fluently add, subtract, multiply, and divide, they're going to do well. So it's a total vast difference from reading to the math assessment.
More discrete skills.
Yeah. So we're just hoping to lean in and continue moving and pushing those foundational skills so we can continue to see greater gains.
Yeah, those gains were phenomenal. Yeah. Great, and thank you for the explanation on the reading. That's very helpful as well.
On the reading, I just want to follow it. So I heard everything that we're doing sort of programmatically to try and do that. Is there anything that we can ask sort of from parents, from community, from, do we need, I don't know, you could tell me that it's like that this wouldn't be helpful because it's too late, right? But do we need to have people in the classrooms reading to third graders? Do we need to have, any of those things? Like, are there other things that can be done to leverage the community and the parents and other support groups, in addition to all the work that you all and the teachers and the principals and APs and all of that?
So I can't imagine that any educator would ever say, no, we can't use your help. But just to be clear, while probably every school, every classroom could use additional help, like, folks have to be willing to talk through, like, what is it specifically that you're offering to help. You need, you're offering, or that you can do, or what have you. But absolutely, to have some additional folks in a classroom listening to, especially in our younger grades, but perhaps in some of the older grades, listening to scholars as they're reading and supporting in those ways in the classroom. I am confident that our school leaders and our teachers and folks could, identify some very discrete, very specific ways that volunteers can help us with. I was actually going to pick up on at home. We're having a round of mid-year principal check-ins. Just, what were your goals? How are things looking based on your benchmark assessments? What are you doing to address some of the needs there? What are you celebrating? All that sort of thing. And one of the things that we are pretty frequently talking to our principals about is, and so what are your messages to homes, to families around their support of scholars? Because there's some, strong trends, third graders this, fifth graders that. And one of the things that, just thinking about, life as it happens in homes, and you're not likely to get all of your parents doing an hour's worth of home instruction. Could we get 10, 15 minutes worth of review of some fluency? Math and reading fluency, root words, suffixes, prefixes, some other things that, and just sight words or vocabulary words. That could be huge,
right?
As we think about how kids attack, how people attack words to find the meanings or to understand them in text. That could be huge. But again, to Mrs. Blackshear's point about fluency, math, facts, adding all of them, that there's such a need for it as scholars, even as they go forward in their schooling and have to use those facts in more complex problems. If I'm fuzzy on my multiplication facts, I'm having to figure that out, even as I figure out this multi-step problem or word problem or whatever it might be. If the math fact is solid and I come into this problem with that, I'm much more likely to attack this word problem or multi-step problem with some effectiveness and accuracy. And so those sorts of things, every day, X number of minutes, 15 minutes even, reviewing those. If our scholars did that every day, or even 5 days a week, between now and whenever they might need them, that can be really powerful. And so that's part of the conversation with our school leaders. How are you supporting families and thinking about what they could do at home, and what might be manageable in the home for that?
All right, any other questions, board members? Thank you so much, Mrs. Blackshear and Dr. Cormack. That was really, really informative.
Thank you, team.
All right. Next, the data binge is not over. We have enrollment updates. So we'll invite Dr. Faith Strong, our Director of Data Management Enrollment Services, to provide us with an update on these important trends. Dr. Strong.
Good evening.
Good evening.
To Board President Dr. Sivak, board members, Superintendent Dr. Green, our JPS family and friends. Tonight, the Office of Enrollment Services will present data to you over the past 10 years. We will highlight our schools and divisions where we have had some increases and decreases within enrollment, and then also just share some data about our charter schools, about how our children are leaving JPS, going to charter schools, and leaving the charter schools and returning to JPS. So as we begin our presentation, of course, we begin with our vision, mission, and core values. And our vision and mission is there, but our core values that relate to this presentation are equity, excellence, and relationships. So the goals of our presentation, we are going to discuss the enrollment data from 10 years ago to the present based on month 1 enrollment. We are going to discuss what contributed to the increase in our pre-K enrollment, identify which division saw the most significant decline in enrollment, discuss enrollment of students transferring from JPS to charter and then from charter back to JPS, and then also take a look at our beginning of the year and end of the year data to look at that comparison. So let's begin with the significance of month 1. So our official enrollment counts are based on students who are enrolled in the district before October the 1st. Once October the 1st hits, we have to transmit those numbers or that data to MDE. Those numbers come from the students that enroll within our district for the months of August and September. And then from that, the state actually captures that data, and then we receive our district funding for the upcoming year, so it's lagged. The data is lagged. But that is how we receive our district funding. So for example, any students that come to us after October 1, we do not receive funding for them. So the first table that we have identifies our month 1 enrollment trends over the past 10 years for pre-kindergarten. We have it broken down by division with our beginning of the year and our end of the year enrollment. And we're going to look at each one of these in detail. So let's begin with our month 1 enrollment comparison. This graph shows a comparison of the JPS enrollment for the beginning of the year compared to the charter school enrollment over the past 10 years. As you can see, there is a decrease in our enrollment for Jackson Public Schools and an increase in the enrollment for charter schools. But the percent of month 1 enrollment change for Jackson Public Schools is 41.3%. Our pre-K enrollment. As you can see, there was a decline in our pre-K enrollment in school year 2021. However, we did have an increase of 48.4% in 21-22. As you can see now, we have a total of 838 scholars enrolled in pre-K And then as of today, we have a total of 870. So we have steady received increase in our pre-K enrollment. So let's look at our divisions, beginning with our elementary division. This is over a 10-year period. For the past 10 years, our elementary division has shown a 48% decrease in enrollment since 2013-2014. So in 2013-2014, we had 14,353 elementary students. As of today, 7,453. So we have lost 6,900 elementary students. Now we would like to highlight some of our schools' enrollment since the pandemic, beginning with elementary team 1 for over the past 5 years. All of the schools that are highlighted in yellow have experienced a decrease in enrollment, and then those that are in white have experienced an increase. Some of those increases include, for instance, Bates Elementary was due to the closure of Van Winkle, and then also Bates was identified as an English learner site for our EL students. Then also we have an increase for Walton, and that was due to the closure of Watkins Elementary. And then of course with Barack Obama, just more and more students who are applying for that particular program. Elementary Team 2, we have 13 out of the 14 schools who have shown a decrease in enrollment. However, we do have Shirley with a 3% increase, and that is due to the closure of Baker Elementary. So overall, between elementary team 1 and elementary team 2, 88% of our elementary schools have shown a decrease in enrollment. Middle schools. Our middle schools have shown a 47% decrease in enrollment for the past 10 years, starting out with 6,527 students. To date, we have 3,442. So we have lost a total of 3,085 middle school students. So our middle school enrollment over the past 5 years, 7 out of the 9 middle schools, that's 77%, have shown a decrease in enrollment since the pandemic. We do have some schools that show an increase. For instance, we have Blackburn with a 27% increase, and that is due to the closure of Hardy, whereas we have Cardozo with a 34% increase, and that is due to the closure of Sowell. Our high school division. Our high school division has shown a 24% decline in enrollment since 13-14. We began with 7,916 students. To date, we have 6,014 students. That's a difference of 1,902. As we highlight our high schools over the past 5 years, we can see that 5 out of the 7, which is 71% of our high schools, have shown a decrease in enrollment since the pandemic. Of course, we have Lanier Junior Senior High School with a 62% increase. And of course, we know that that is due to the closure of Brinkley, 7th and 8th grade students attending there this year. And then also we have a 2% increase for Callaway. And that is due to our in-district transfer process, where students are able to, apply or proceed with saying that I would like to attend school here, and then so that process is where the principal actually approves for the students to attend there for that particular school year. So that is done annually. Now we will take a look at our transfers to charter schools. And this chart just identifies, since the charter schools have been in existence since school year 15-16 compared to now, We have identified our JPS students to charter school. Then we'll take a look at our JPS students who have attended a charter school and returned back to us by division, and then also taking a look at the number of students who have returned to JPS after our month 1 snapshot. So our charter transfer trends, of course you can see that JPS to charter and charter to JPS, there's an increase for both. Currently, for this school year compared to last year, you do see that there is a decrease, but of course we know that is due to the school year not being over as of right now. However, though, when we look at our trend for how many students are returning to JPS after month 1, there was an increase for about a 4-year period, but then during the pandemic, there was a decrease, and then from there, we've kind of been seeing our numbers fluctuate up and down. So as of right now, only 32 students have returned from the charter schools since month 1. Our charter school data by division, you can see where our elementary and middle school numbers are a steady increase throughout the year. However, our high school numbers are higher than the elementary and middle, and of course that is due to no high school charter schools in the state of Mississippi. As we compare our beginning of the year enrollment to our end of the year enrollment for month 1 compared to month 9, so over a 7-year period, we've seen a decrease. But however, in 2021, which was after the pandemic, we have seen an increase in our enrollment compared to the beginning of the year. So for this year, our snapshot, we had 16,909 students, and as of right now, our enrollment is 17,292 students. So we have an increase of 383. So some enrollment takeaways. So as we have reviewed our data over the past 10 years, you can see that we did have a significant decline in enrollment, which is 41%, and we've lost 11,887 students. What contributed to the increase in pre-K enrollment? And that was due to the district being awarded the Early Learning Collaborative Grant in 21-22. Which division saw the most decline in enrollment? And that is our elementary division with 48% decline, 6,900 students. So the question was posed, as we encounter or continue to encounter enrollment challenges for the foreseeable future, planning ahead, at what levels of enrollment should we be considering additional school closures? And of course, as a district, we will continue to closely monitor our enrollment data between the next 3 to 5 years to assess and see if there is a potential need to provide more or close more schools. However, it is crucial to acknowledge that something had to be done this year because of our drastic decline in enrollment over the past 10 years. As students return to JPS, there is a steady increase of their return among all divisions, but again, focusing on our high schools because there are no charter schools for grades 9 through 12. And then our comparison of our month 1 data to our month 9, on average, we are roughly losing between 98 students each year. So I'll take any questions at this time.
Thank you, Dr. Strong. Board members, questions, comments?
Y'all are always making me start. Yeah, I just had a question on the. I had one question on the last 2 slides. The last bullet of the last slide, talking about an average enrollment change from beginning of the year to the end of the year. How does that how does that tie out with what we saw on the chart right before it? I thought we were saying we saw an increase.
We have seen an increase now, but that's on average.
You're looking at a 10-year average.
Yes.
Right there. I got you.
Yes, that's on average.
So it's fair to say the last 4 years.
Last 4 years.
We're seeing
an increase.
A rough average of 200 or thereabout, 150 to 200. Okay. That's it for me for now. Yeah.
Other questions?
I guess that's a good question in terms of what can we do to minimize the number of students that are moving to charter schools.
Be better.
I've thought about that, and I have not been able to come up with, because, you know, I guess students move where the parents are moving, and if the parents are moving out of the district, then, you know, naturally the students, but this is not really a bad number, you know. I don't know, do you look at it as being a bad number in terms of number of students that we are losing? I guess any is bad.
Yeah.
Yeah.
So you made a couple of statements. So a bad number. I want to make sure I'm referencing what specifically you're saying. Ultimately, the number that we've lost over time, or the number of scholars that have gone to charters. What are you referencing specifically?
That average 98.
That average 98 loss. So it's been worse. I don't know how to respond. It's been far worse in earlier years, and it's gotten better in the last few years in terms of the loss during the school year. But the reality is we have continued to lose from year to year. So you've got both the comparison of beginning of year and end of year. Do we continue to lose within a year, or do we add more within the year? Adding more is problematic after month one, because we've got more scholars, glad to have them, but we don't have the resources to follow them. So that's problematic if they're coming after the official count. And, however, it's hard to see or to analyze this in terms of, you know, we're gaining over the last few years. We've been gaining some scholars back, but we've still seen a decline in the next year. I'm hoping, assuming, wondering if some of that, the numbers of scholars that we gain back during the year, if that's not helping to slow the decline year to year. Because you do see in the last few years that the decline has been less than what we saw in years past from year to year. I think at one point there was 1,400 or so scholars that we lost from one year to the next. So the number of scholars that we're losing from year to year to year is lessening. This year, I think I don't remember the exact numbers, but this year our decline from last year was a few hundred. It's fine. It was a few hundred or so. It wasn't more than 400. Or was it? Not more than 500.
No, not more than 500.
Not more than 500. Yes. So anyway, and that's less than what we saw last year in decline from the year prior. Long way to say that, but you know, there are some, I think, some brighter spots in it, but as we continue to experience declines, that's a challenge. So what can we do about it? My immediate response and gut response is be better. The better we are, the higher we perform, the better our buildings are, the more stable our staffing is, the more we provide in terms of some of the creative programming that you cannot find other places, and help people who sit next to our programs in our schools to know what's in them, and not ask, why don't we teach trades or whatever. It's like, we do, but there are some people who don't know that. And so I think those are ways that we continue to arrest the decline that we see, and prove to folks, you've got some really good options here. You can choose to go someplace else, to a charter school or private school, or move out of the city. But we want folks to see that they've got good options here, and not make that not to make it an easy decision, right? Because you've got some things here that speak to your child and that you can trust and that get results.
Are any of the losses that we are experiencing private schools that are not charter schools?
Yes, ma'am. Private schools, other surrounding school districts,
Right.
out of state, and even homeschool.
Right. Not all of the losses to charters.
Right.
Do we have the data on private school / homeschool? I mean, as Ms. Hilliard said, I think talking about whether a kid is outside the district, they physically live out, their parents live outside the district, or if they're going to another public school in another district, that's a different kind of loss than somebody in Jackson opting into a separate thing. So we have this ability to track for charters, and I understand why we can get really granular with that. Do we have the ability to track for private schools, and or can we try? I guess is my
We
two
do.
questions.
We do.
Okay.
But it's all based on them requesting
Right.
records.
It is. It's based on the request, but we do track. So when we do receive the official request for a student being enrolled somewhere else, we transfer them out in the system.
Can we get that info?
We can.
Great.
I got a couple of questions. I was thinking about what's special going on at Callaway?
Athletics, I know for one.
Okay.
Leadership. Yeah.
Okay. I was just wondering what you and then because you mentioned that the principal could allow the students to transfer in. So if students are wanting to go there, parents are wanting their children to go there. I was wondering why they, what's happening over there that makes them want to do that and transfer over there. And you mentioned too about packaging what our offerings are so people can know, what we offer at each school, like the different things that they can go and be a part of. My other question is in relationship to the resources, like you said, when they come in, like these numbers I see have been increasing steadily the last few years, but it's after the calendar date, so therefore we don't have the monies for those students in that next school year because they hadn't been counted. So what can be done about that? And I know not at the school level, but like through legislation, law, MDE, what is the push? Who do we push a change in on that particular issue so that those students, whenever they come, can be counted? Because this year-out thing is not working for us because of the fluctuation in students, but those bodies are there. Right. And they're there for the rest of the year. Like in other words, you still got to have all of this stuff for these students coming next year, and we know we don't have the money for them.
Right. I want to start where you started with regard to the schools and marketing and all of that. So I've only known in my 32 years, I've only known in districts where the school community, the school leader and the school community takes the lead and is the greatest trumpeter of what's happening in that school. it's really hard for the school district to say, hey, y'all really need to check out Callaway when I've got 6 other comprehensive schools. It's hard for me to say that, right, and not hurt other schools. We want to lift up all, but the school community, the school leader and the team and the scholars, parents, they're the ones who drive that message. And while Callaway is being highlighted for the 2% increase, just want to name, likewise, Jim Hill with the 5% decrease. Now, they've had a decrease, but compared to others, that's minimal. And that's another school where, like, the principal there sees it as his mission in life to create an experience that you want to have and that rivals others. And you know, with all of the, I'll say rhetoric, but the slogans and things that they use to really drive forward this message that this is the best place to be. And again, you know, these are some of this is about personality for sure. But these are the kinds of things that where you see your school community really lifting up and with a level of school pride that you it begets more school pride. And that's certainly not to say that other schools don't have lots of things to champion, but you know, those are some specific call-outs with data to back it up. What do we do about the funding thing? I mean, it's absolutely a legislative issue, absolutely. And in this case, it's not just do we fund using average daily membership or average daily attendance. Like, this is about when do you do the snapshot and how do you fund. So if there were, somewhat spitballing here, but if there were a situation where it's not just about that snapshot, but some look at trends over time, you know, for a district that has had a decline from the last year, but you've seen in the last few years where we've also increased over the course of the year, could that be some way to augment and treat the funding? I don't know what the policy fix is, but to your point, it's not quite working with us. And ultimately, I mean, the last thing I'll say on that is, and this is specific to charters, but I think in general, you know, you expect me to provide the teachers and the lights and the books and all the things for any scholar who shows up, regardless of when they show up. They show up the last day of school. You expect me to have staffing there. And if there's 33 scholars in this high school classroom, you expect me to figure out how not to have too many, right? The student teacher, how to maintain the student teacher ratio in that classroom. So what does that mean for me? And staying in compliance. All that being said, there's got to be some truing up of the money when the scholars move around. And I know, you know, it's tough for us, so I can imagine it'd be tough for the state and the auditors and treasury and whatnot, but that's the work. We've got to do it. Somehow there's got to be a truing up, whether they're going to a charter or coming to us after count day, whether they're going to Madison or coming from Madison to us or wherever else. So something that addresses that could be the fix, but that's what I got.
I've got a couple of a few different things that I just want to throw in. One is just for my own understanding, JTEX, those kids are still attributed to the sending school. So when we see them on this data, they're still showing up in there. Okay. The second is a question that really goes to special programming and those schools. The declines that you see are kind of across the board for most of those schools. There's a couple of outliers. Obviously, Obama is a major outlier. You had a very small shift down in McWillie. But when you look at some of the others, Casey, Wells, even Northwest IB, so it's not as if the IB program is maintaining an uptick. Bailey APAC, you're seeing steady declines across those special programs, and there's a question there, and I guess the question is, what do we think is happening? But I almost just want to cast a spotlight on it and to say, we've got these incredible things, and you can go look at what we looked at before on that benchmark data for those schools, and they're knocking out of the park, right? So how do we get more families plugged into that, right? That's sort of a challenge to put out there. The last point that I kind of want to make, I want to circle back on a question Ms. Hilliard had, something that Ms. Thompson touched on. You're right that one of the ways that we combat charters and one of the ways that we combat even loss to private schools and things like that is by being better, doing our work, moving ourselves up the chain. However, it's also fair to acknowledge they're doing really poorly. Okay? They're doing really poorly, and they're still leeching off. So there is something to the mass marketing effort that is being made. And so I think that's another thing for us to sort of take into the hopper of how do you counteract them sending 4 mailers to every kid in the district or every kid that lives in a certain area within Jackson. Because I can tell you, if you live in Bellhaven, you got hit with at least 4 consecutive months of registration offers from certain charters. That's how they're getting kids. It's not because anybody went and looked at data and was like, man, I really want to be a part of that. It's not. So I think we've got to really dial in on how we message. And I'm not talking about featuring schools. I'm talking about featuring the district, right? I'm not saying that we need to go out there and say, you need to go check out Callaway, or you need to go check out Cardozo, or whatever it is. It is, you need to come check out what we're doing, because this district is on a train that they're not on. And I think that's also true of a lot of the proliferation of private schools that we've seen. They don't have to get tested. They don't want to get tested, because I don't think that would go well. All right? So part of this is definitely, we got to get better. Excellence has to be, it's in our core values, and it has to be in our core values, and we have to exemplify that. But we also got to figure out something to counteract the slick presentation that is duping people into something that's not good for them.
Heard.
Yeah.
Other questions? 2 questions I have. What's the ceiling on charter school enrollment? Do we know what that number is? Because I know they add classes year, but as long as we're a C, there should be a ceiling. Do we know what that is?
I'll let Dr. Merritt speak to it.
So within their application, there is a number that they cannot exceed. And on their website, we can pull their charters and see what number they cannot exceed. So I guess there is somewhat of a ceiling. Would you say that, Dr. Cormack?
Is there?
Well, where I was going is I know there's a certain number of schools, they usually add grade 1, then they add grade 2, all the way up to 5th grade, and so are we maxed out yet, or there's that's the number I'm looking for. What's our exposure?
What's the potential of charter school enrollment?
Once they're maxed out, once they've added all their grades, and obviously and they're enrolled. That's the number.
Let's come back with that. And I want to make sure we're clear, because I thought it was they have a charter to serve certain grades, but I did not think that there was a cap on how many first graders or how many 5th graders. You're saying there is? Okay. All right.
Yeah, I think there is, but I would also say they're space confined as well, so that's another piece of it. But.
So there is a cap, and based on currently approved charters that are in record for those in our Jackson area, it would be 3,015 at the height of the cap. Now, there is some variability in terms of approved charters and them having enrolling students in excess of the cap, and that's another issue that we need to bring to light and to be aware of. But there are enrollment caps at each of the charters. Additionally, just bringing awareness and light to those issues, our team, Dr. Anthony Moore, attends each of the charter authorizer meetings so that we have line of sight to issues of discussion and things that are on the agenda, so that we are aware as charters are up for renewal, what the conversation is like, and what the auditing processes look like internally for each of those schools. But in answer to the question, the current cap for approved charters right now stands at 3,015 scholars.
But there's some flex in how, and them being able to go over their numbers. Is that what I heard you say?
There is flex that has been exercised. Now, whether or not that is something that is permissible is not something that has been actively contested.
Does that catch? This is just trying to button in on. I'm trying to consolidate on how on that number. The number that's authorized, does that take into account adding grades? Because Midtown this year, right, they just made an application to add first grade or something like that. So
this figure contemplates, so those charters that are currently in the renewal process. So what they have applied for and what is in queue. So at full expansion in the year 26-27, the cap at that juncture would be 3,015 scholars if approved as has been applied for. Now, they don't currently stand at that number, and there's some opportunity, and that's pending those new authorizations. But we've mapped it out annually to be able to reliably predict what is the potential, both in terms of impact in enrollment and also impact in terms of fiscally in the district.
So you said there's actually people have applied for new charters?
So the charter has to be renewed after a certain period. Okay. And so a renewal is a little bit different. We're not talking about creation of new schools, but then therein too lies within existing schools a growth opportunity to either expand downward to serve grade levels not originally contemplated, or to expand upward, through reconfigurations and through application.
Okay. And then just one other, thank you, that was really helpful. This one's about planning. Heard it in terms of fiscal on the charter schools, but also just thinking through enrollment. If you look 10 years ago, elementary school students made up 50% of our student population. Today it's 44%. So what are we doing to forecast space, personnel? Because if that either stays where it is or shrinks, eventually that's going to move to the middle school and then the high school, and future boards are going to have to make decisions. And so just wondering what we're doing to forecast that so it doesn't sneak up on us, or we don't willingly or knowingly kick it down the road. I think that's the right way to frame it.
I don't have a good answer for it. We've been forecasting. Thankfully, as we have seen in this data, there's some leveling off of the decline over time that we're hopeful will continue. Typically, when we're in the budgeting process, we're looking at trailing data trends that we've seen to date, and looking at least 1 year out. We could certainly look at potential revenues a few years out, but we don't have a a strong protocol right now outside of the optimization effort that we just had. So that's something we'll have to just consider. What might that look like to model out, and hopefully with this year's data and wherever it lands on enrollment, wherever it lands, see what the trend is starting to look like.
That's helpful.
Yeah. So this is something that, you know, if you'll take a note, Ms. Donald, we can try to model out a couple of years if the trend continues, what we've seen continues, what that could look like at elementary, across the board, at middle, at high, what have you.
Okay. Thank you.
Sure.
Thank you.
Any other questions, board members? I just want to take a moment to thank the teams that put together the benchmark data and the enrollment data. I know we're late. I actually appreciate that there's a lot of questions. It's I think indicative that we appreciate it, and we're reading it, we're thinking about it, and it's not taken for granted. So thank you to all the teams that put in the work.
Thank you, Dr. Sivak, and thank you all for the questions. The team really spent a lot of time on this analysis and review of this data, so appreciate your questions and engagement. Yeah.
Absolutely. All right. Dr. Merritt is still at the podium because he is going to present the agreement between Grand Canyon University and the Jackson Public School District. So, Dr. Merritt, take us away.
Yes, sir. The administration is recommending to the board that the current agreement with the Grand Canyon University College of Education be renewed to continue providing student teaching internship in Jackson Public School District during the 24 school year and extends to the 2027 fall and spring semesters. Question was asked. We've had one candidate to student teach from Grand Canyon, and they are current employees. So we are grateful and appreciate this partnership.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Any questions, board members, comments? Thank you. We'll now move on to information action items. Dr. Merritt will present the request to approve the agreement between the Jackson State University School of Social Work and the district. Dr. Merritt.
Okay, the administration is recommending to the board that Jackson State University School of Social Work be contracted to provide clinical experience through student teaching internship in the Jackson Public School District. Actually, will be now the spring of 24 and the spring until the spring semester that extends through June 30th, 2026.
Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Board members, are there any questions or comments? All right, hearing none, Dr. Merritt, I'll just ask you to move on to the next one. We'll take item A and B together. Dr. Merritt will present the request to approve the agreement between the MSD, what is that, School District of Decatur Township, Leaders Connect, and probably Mississippi School District of Decatur Township, Leaders Connect, and the Jackson Public School District.
Yes, sir. So the administration is recommending approval of the Jackson Public School District and the Office of Human Resources participation in the Leaders Connect initiative for the remainder of the 23-24 school year. This was a service that was provided through a previous grant. I believe it was Project Ignite. Okay. That grant sunsetted this past fall. And so this entity was willing to continue the service free of charge. And so in order to do that, we needed to have our own MOU with them in order to continue the service. And it is one that we have found of value for our teachers.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Merritt. Any questions, board members? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve items A and B?
I so move. Second.
Ms. Hilliard has moved. Mrs. Thompson has seconded. All in favor?
Aye.
Aye. The motion carries. Next, we have the request to approve the rebid of 2023-15, 11-14-23 between Ed Mentum and the Jackson Public School District for middle school math tutorials, outcome-based contracting. Is Dr. Evans here this evening? Hey, Dr. Evans. Dr. Evans, our Assistant Superintendent for the Middle School Division, will present this information.
Good evening.
Good evening.
Dr. Green, School Board President, and school board members. The administration recommends the review and approval of the middle school mathematics outcomes-based contracting for high-impact outcomes-based tutorial. The district desires to move middle school students who have scored at the performance level of 3 to performance level 4 or 5 based on MAP assessments. Due to unfinished learning that was caused by the pandemic, the district endeavors to address gaps in learning to improve academic performance. Research consistently demonstrates that tutoring interventions have substantial positive effects on student learning. As a result, tutoring has emerged as a promising strategy. The services to be provided by Edmentum LLC will be offered at Blackburn Middle School, Bailey Middle School, Cardozo, Chastain, Wheaton, Northwest, Kirksey, Powell, and Peoples.
Great. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Board members, any questions, comments? Dr. Evans, it's my understanding that this will be, next week, will be in the schools and active?
Yes.
Great. Okay, board members, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Mrs. Thompson has moved. Mr. Figurs has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Dr. Evans. Next, we have the request to approve, and we'll have Dr. Burke up for the next two. So we'll do them. The first is the request to approve the 16th section assignment and assumption between Jackson Public School District and Battlefield Properties and the Jackson Resource Center. Dr. Burke.
Thank you, President Seaback, board members, Superintendent Green, and our audience of Jackson Public School family. The administration recommends the approval of lease assignment agreement between the Jackson Public School District and the Jackson Resource Center, assuming the current lease agreement at Battlefield Properties LLC for the 16th section property located at 1815 through 1817 University Boulevard, Jackson, Mississippi, as identified as tax parcel 201-4. This assignment and the assumption of this lease wherein Battlefield Properties LLC assigns all its rights and interest in the lease to Jackson Resource Center. The lease was initially entered into December 1st of 2011. It will expire on December 1st of 2043. The lease requires the property to be reappraised every 8 years. The assumed rent will remain unchanged at $2,800, and the lease will continue. The annual rental for December 1st through 2023 through December 2024 has been paid, and the next rental date will be 2024, and at that time, $2,800 will be due. And this is in our I-20 corridor section.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Board members, any questions, comments? Hearing none, we'll move on to item E, the request to approve the emergency closure of schools and district offices due to winter weather, the state of emergency, and of providing administrative leave with pay for all employees. Mr. Burke.
Thank you. The administration recommends the approval of the superintendent's emergency closure of schools and district offices from January 16th through January 19th in response to Governor Reeves' winter weather state of emergency. Additionally, the administration recommends the authorization of additional administrative leave with pay for certain classified employees impacted by the unforeseen school closures per board policy AFA EBAA on emergency closure of schools. Those classified employees will be bus drivers, custodial, and other support personnel impacted.
Thank you, Mr. Burke. Any questions, board members? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve item D and E?
Second.
Mr. Figurs has moved. Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye. Aye. The motion carries. Thank you, Mr. Burke. Next, we have the consent agenda item finance. All the consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board previously, and we have had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? If not, board members, is there a motion to approve the consent agenda finance?
So moved.
Second.
Mr. Figurs has moved. Ms. Hilliard has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda item general. All the consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board previously and have had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
So moved.
Second.
Second.
Mr. McGuffey has moved, Ms. Healy has seconded. All in favor? Aye.
Aye.
The motion carries. Next, we have the consent agenda items personnel. All the consent agenda items have been reviewed by the board previously and we've had an opportunity to ask questions of the administration. Are there any further questions? Hearing none, is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Second.
Ms. Healy has moved, Mr. McGuffey has seconded. All in favor? Aye. The motion carries. I do not believe there is an executive session. So that means we'll take a motion to adjourn. Mrs. Thompson already moved, Mr. Figurs. So Mr. Figurs second. All in favor? Aye. Motion carries. Thank you, everyone, and have a good evening.